On July 15, 2025, the U.S. dairy industry was rocked by a major blow. A massive shipment of American milk was turned away at the port of Rotterdam. This wasn't a minor hiccup. It was a clear message from the European Union that the rules of trade had changed. The rejection sent shockwaves from Wisconsin's dairy farms to Chicago's trading floors. More than a lost sale, it exposed a widening gap between U.S. agricultural practices and Europe's strict environmental standards. For years, American producers built a lucrative export relationship with the EU. Now that door has slammed shut. The financial hit is immediate, but the reputational damage and uncertainty for future deals are even more troubling. Farmers and exporters are left scrambling, unsure if they can ever meet the EU's evolving criteria. At the heart of the standoff, Europe's new farm-to-fork strategy, imposing tough requirements on animal welfare and carbon emissions. U.S. producers call it protectionism. The EU insists it's about consumer and planetary safety. The impact ripples through the entire U.S. dairy supply chain, from family farms to processing plants. This single event highlights the fragility of global supply chains and the power of distant regulations to disrupt local economies. For American dairy, this is more than a trade dispute. It's an existential challenge demanding adaptation and innovation. The industry now faces a critical turning point, with its future in the balance. The rejected shipment was massive, over 250 containers, carrying more than 5 million liters of ultra-high temperature processed milk. Valued at $7.5 million, it was a joint effort by dairy cooperatives in Wisconsin and New York, destined for supermarkets across Europe. Redirecting or disposing of such a large, perishable shipment is a logistical nightmare, adding millions in unexpected costs. The milk can't simply return home, it may be dumped at a loss or destroyed, compounding the financial pain. For the cooperatives, this is a catastrophic failure after months of planning and investment. Trust between U.S. suppliers and European buyers is shaken, leaving gaps in supply chains and future deals in doubt. The symbolic blow is even greater. What should have been a routine delivery is now a high-profile example of non-compliance. The message to American agriculture is clear: the rules have changed and previous standards are no longer enough. Access to the EU market now demands strict adherence to a new regulatory framework. Many U.S. producers are unprepared for these demands, putting billions in exports at risk. The incident is a wake-up call for the entire sector. Adaptation is no longer optional, it's essential for survival. The rejection stemmed directly from the EU's new carbon border adjustment mechanism and farm-to-fork strategy, in force since January 2025. These rules align imports with the EU's climate goals, requiring all products to meet strict carbon and sustainability standards. The U.S. shipment failed to provide the detailed, third-party verified data on emissions and farm practices now required. Unlike Europe's centralized data systems, the fragmented U.S. farm network struggles to track emissions at the granular level demanded. The EU's policy aims to prevent carbon leakage and ensure a level playing field for its producers. U.S. industry groups see these requirements as non-tariff barriers, designed to keep out efficient American producers. Critics argue the EU is using climate policy to protect its own farmers under the guise of environmentalism. The new rules extend beyond Europe's borders, effectively exporting its standards to all trading partners. For U.S. exporters, meeting these demands is a major challenge. The regulatory landscape has shifted, and compliance is now the price of entry. The future of U.S. dairy exports depends on adapting to this new reality. The financial fallout is staggering. The U.S. exports over $1.8 billion in dairy to the EU each year. Now that entire stream is in jeopardy. Industry analysts warn losses could top $500 million in the first year if the impasse continues. The hardest hit are processors and cooperatives facing idle facilities and mounting liabilities. The rejected shipment alone means nearly $10 million in immediate losses for the consortium involved. This strain could force layoffs, delayed investments, and lower prices for farmers, deepening the crisis. Commodity markets reacted instantly. Milk futures dropped nearly 4% on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. A sudden surplus of milk at home drives prices down for all farmers, not just exporters. Years of market development in Europe are at risk, as buyers turn to more stable suppliers in New Zealand, Australia, or within the EU. Even sympathetic European importers can't afford supply disruptions. Regaining lost market share will be an uphill battle, even if regulatory issues are resolved. The crisis threatens the entire U.S. dairy ecosystem from farm to factory. The industry faces a vicious cycle of declining prices and shrinking opportunities. The stakes have never been higher. The crisis hits rural America hardest, far beyond the farm gates. Every dairy farm supports a web of local businesses: vets, feed suppliers, equipment dealers, and truckers. When farmers' incomes fall, spending dries up, hurting small-town economies. The U.S. dairy sector supports over 3 million jobs. A sustained export disruption could mean layoffs and plant closures. In many towns, a single dairy plant is the main employer. Job losses ripple through schools, shops, and public services. Family farms, already squeezed by consolidation and low prices, may not survive another blow. The loss of stable export demand accelerates farm closures and industry consolidation. As farms fail, communities hollow out, young people leave, and local institutions weaken. A rejected shipment in Europe becomes a crisis on Main Street, Wisconsin, or New York. The global economy's interconnections have never been more painfully clear. The US-EU dispute is a windfall for global competitors. New Zealand's Fonterra and European producers are ready to fill the gap, offering products that align with EU sustainability standards. French and German cooperatives now enjoy a protected market, securing better prices and long-term contracts. Some US officials call this protectionism disguised as environmentalism. The international response is mixed. Other exporters fear the EU's approach could spark a wave of similar trade barriers worldwide. The World Trade Organization may soon be called to decide if these rules are legal or protectionist. The outcome could reshape global trade, setting new precedents for climate-related import standards. The stakes extend far beyond dairy, touching the future of agricultural trade everywhere. The US government responded quickly, condemning the EU's move and launching high-level talks. The goal: negotiate mutual recognition of US sustainability programs as equivalent to EU standards. This requires intense technical negotiations and proof that US emissions tracking is robust. If talks fail, the US is ready to challenge the EU at the World Trade Organization and consider retaliatory tariffs. Domestically, the government is buying surplus milk for nutrition programs and pushing for federal support to help farmers upgrade technology. Lawmakers are calling for investment in data systems to meet EU requirements. The dual approach: cushion the immediate blow and prepare the industry for a new global trade reality. The path forward is complex, demanding both diplomacy and adaptation. The outcome will shape the future of US agriculture on the world stage. The long-term solution lies in rapid technological adaptation. US dairy must invest in tools to measure and verify environmental metrics, methane digesters, advanced feed, and blockchain-enabled data platforms. Diplomatic engagement is key. A joint US-EU task force could harmonize standards and promote climate-friendly farming. Framing the issue as a shared challenge could turn confrontation into cooperation. Market diversification is also vital. Expanding exports to Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America reduces reliance on Europe. New trade agreements and targeted promotion can build a more resilient export portfolio. Domestically, stronger incentives for sustainable practices, grants, tax credits, or premiums can help farmers adapt. Aligning US agriculture with global climate goals turns a trade crisis into a catalyst for innovation. The industry's future depends on embracing change and leading in sustainability. The EU's rejection of US milk is more than a trade spat. It's a turning point for global agriculture. The crisis exposes the vulnerability of US dairy to shifting international standards and fierce competition. Billions in exports and the fate of rural communities hang in the balance. The US response, diplomacy, legal action, and domestic support shows the complexity of the challenge. The path forward demands innovation, investment, and a willingness to adapt. This is about more than milk. It's about the future rules of global trade in a climate-conscious world. The American dairy industry stands at a crossroads. Will it adapt and thrive, or risk long-term decline?